Hello and welcome. I'm joined by Wendy Luhabe, Chair of the Women Private Equity Fund out of South Africa. Wendy, thank you very much for speaking with us. So tell us, what are the most exciting investments you've done in the last 1 year since we last met?
Well, the fund was actually closed a few years ago, so we haven't done any investments. We've been exiting investments, in fact.
Okay, what are the most happy exits that you've had?
The first investment that we've exited was in a medical technology business that enabled us to recover 70% of the capital back to the investors. So that's very exciting. So we're now left with 4 smaller investments that are at different stages of exiting. And that process is taking much longer because the nature of venture capital is that you have to nurture these businesses, identify growth opportunities for them, identify new markets for them, help to build management capacity. Because what we've realized is that entrepreneurs don't prioritize building organizational capacity. You know, they have a great idea and they just go into the market without building the organizational and the management capacity to pursue those opportunities in a systematic way.
Right. So, and are most of your other investments technology linked as well?
Only one other one is technology linked, actually, yes. Only another one is an innovation that came out of our science research organization, which is a technology for the eyes. So this lady created an invention that you put on the eyes to help the eyes to remove the black marks underneath the eyes. And we've taken it global. When we invested in the company, it was just an operation in South Africa. And as a result of our involvement, we've been able to take them to Europe, to America, and to Asia.
So what are the new kinds of, I mean, even if you're not investing, so what are the trends that you're seeing in terms of investment opportunities or new entrepreneurs and ideas that are coming up at this point in Africa as a whole?
It's a whole range. There's obviously a lot of opportunities in technology, given the disparities that exist in our economy throughout the continent. And people are using technology to bridge the digital divide, to provide access to market for people. So that's the first one. The second one is that we've got a rising middle class in different parts of Africa who are consuming cars, who are consuming homes, products that have not been accessible to them previously. And thirdly, we have a growth in the services industries, in the hospitality industry, in the architectural businesses. So it's right across the economy, because South Africa has a big economy, but it's primarily been a mining economy, and we've recognized the limitations of just dominating or allowing ourselves to be focused on just one industry and putting all our eggs into one basket. So we've seen the emergence of a whole range of industries that are not only growing, but they are meeting the needs and aspirations of the rising middle class.
Right. So you're a frequent visitor to India as well, and there are a lot of conditions here are similar to Africa in terms of bottom of the pyramid opportunities and so on.
Yes.
What are the kind of areas you think there could be more collaboration, or you would sort of like to see more collaboration and to create some sort of more global products and services?
Well, there are 2 areas. The first area is creating businesses that enable communities to circulate the money that they generate within the community, which is something that doesn't happen very often in poor communities. Something as simple as bread. I've been involved in creating micro bakeries in communities. All households consume at least 2 loaves of bread a day. There's absolutely no reason, you don't need to be a genius to make bread. There's no reason why those communities are not making their own bread or making bread for the households around them. So these micro bakeries that we're creating are able to provide bread to 24 families around them. And that way
and that's
circulates.
A sort of sustainable business in itself.
It's a sustainable business itself. It has enabled these families to generate an income from 0 to an equivalent of $500, more or less. I don't know what the exchange rate is between the rupee and the rand, so I'll use dollars. The second area is agriculture. A lot of women are in the countryside and they own land. But what they don't have is the expertise to convert that asset into something that can generate a living for them. So I have invested again in a project. It's a pilot project where I've enabled a community of about 50 families to buy seeds, and they planted their first 2 crops last year. They planted cabbages and they planted butternut. I don't know if these are vegetables that are available in India.
Cabbages for sure.
And these crops have already been harvested, and this is a project that started in November last year. They planted the seeds. They had the summer rains.
So what's unique in this project?
What's unique is that they were sitting on land and they didn't know how to convert that land into something that makes exactly. You know, so these are very simple solutions, but I think they demonstrate that, you know, I was speaking earlier in the session that we need to discuss the kind of economic growth that reduces the levels of poverty in society and creates employment opportunities for people. We can't continue to support jobless growth. You know, so we speak of growth and really we limit that to the performance of the stock market. That doesn't benefit people on the ground. Countries like India and continents like Africa that are wealthy on the one hand because of the natural resources that they have, but are so poor on the other hand because we just have been less successful in finding economic models that respond to both of these opportunities is something that we have to correct.
But are you also in some ways advocating more bottom of the pyramid nurturing attempts, you know, more the sort of micro lending and micro loan
I'm not an advocate
innovation
of micro lending because I think it has its advantages and disadvantages. And
I mean, if I've drawn the right analogy, I'm not. I mean, am I? You know, because the example that you used in agriculture seems to be the outcome of a small lending or a small.
Yes, the difference though is that the investment is in the project; it's not in the people.
Okay.
So I really facilitate the participation of communities into economic opportunities that enable them to generate a living for themselves in a sustainable way. So I advance a loan to them. So it is some element of micro-lending, I suppose, and it's probably at a slightly higher level than the amounts.
Because you're investing in a company, as you said. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And the amounts are a couple of hundreds of thousands. You know, so they are not in the minute scale that you usually find in micro-lending.
Right. So if I were to come back to technology, between technology as in the sort of cutting edge technology, perhaps applied to bottom of the pyramid applications, and some of these interesting innovations you talked about, like micro bakeries or using sort of so far not cultivated land to build, create crops and so on. What are the what are the sort of areas where you're seeing more focus or more opportunity in, let's say, the coming 1 or 2 years?
It's hard to say because the opportunities are changing. You know, we're living in such a dynamic environment, but they are always going to be around technology. And perhaps the most obvious example to use is the ability for people to use mobile technology to access opportunities in Africa, because we have a high penetration of mobile telephony, as I think you do have in India as well. In South Africa alone, it's more than 90%. So I think that a lot of the opportunities are really going to arise out of looking at a mobile phone as a tool and looking at how that tool can give people access to medical information, for example. Or, you know, there were discussions that people who have chronic diseases like diabetes don't really have to go to a clinic for a checkup. That through the use of mobile technology, we can find a way for people to do their checkups using technology. Because transportation is very expensive in a country like South Africa that doesn't really have a proper transport infrastructure that links people in the outlying areas to where the services are. And so I think that we will see a revolution of the usage of mobile telephony to create much greater access for people to services that they need, to products that they need. And perhaps, I'm not sure what it's referred to, the ability to is it called buying online? What is that industry called?
E-commerce. Yeah.
E-commerce,
Yeah.
e-commerce, exactly. There's also, we're beginning to see the younger generation are more comfortable to purchase online. You know, my generation, not so much. We don't really trust the technology very much, but younger people don't have the barriers. And so I think that's also the next development that we're going to see throughout the continent.
Right. So last question, are you, if at all, putting together your next fund, and are you?
No, I'm not planning to raise the next fund. I'm being very opportunistic now. So I'm waiting for opportunities that are underfunded, but that are focusing on communities and providing a way for people who are neglected by, you know, both policy making as well as the availability of resources to lift themselves out of poverty. Because I think if we can do that at scale, we will begin to make governments irrelevant. You know, so if governments are not really looking after people and providing them with the resources that they need to take care of themselves, then we need to have alternatives.
And that's a fairly optimistic note to end on, I must say. Wendy, thank you very much for speaking with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.